Well, I'm currently in Libya, and here I work for a humanitarian organization. I'm from Brazil, but I've never lived in a house or in a specific place more than 4 years. We cannot save the world. I mean, if somebody is doing this, thinking that they can be like a Superman, Superwoman, or whatever, no, it's impossible. And then she stopped me, and then she told me, there's nothing wrong with putting more love into the world.
Hi, I'm Lucia, and you're listening to Stories of Ordinary Lives. We often think that only the famous have interesting stories, but I believe that everyone does. In each episode, I sit down with someone you've never heard of, but whose voice matters. From cities to villages, across continents, we uncover the rich tapestry of human experience, showing that we are more alike than we think. Welcome to Stories of Ordinary Lives, where every life tells a tale worth hearing.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Stories of Ordinary Lives. But today you'll soon discover that there is actually nothing ordinary about our guest. And I'm extremely excited that you agreed to join me for this episode. So hello, Carol, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm really excited to be here talking with you.
Amazing. So for a little background, so I met Carol in Guatemala, in the beautiful town of Antigua, in a really cool cocktail bar. And she was extremely, it was a good night. And she was extremely kind.
Everything was a good night, yeah.
Because I was traveling solo and I was just sitting on the bar alone, trying some cocktails, and she was sitting next to me. So we got to chat and it was amazing. And we chatted the whole night, had loads of fun. And after the bar closed, she and Alejandro was the bartender.
Yeah.
They took Alex, they took me and another guy I actually met in Lake Atislan. They took us to like a local food stand where I would never go on my own in the middle of the night. And the food was fantastic. And then you walked me home, which was really kind from you. And yeah, it was overall such a pleasant experience. And I'm so grateful because those experiences are exactly why I travel and what I search for when I travel. But today, we are not in Guatemala anymore. I'm in London. Carol, where are you and what do you do there?
Well, I'm currently in Libya, and here I work for a humanitarian organization as a protection manager. Yeah, it's been a long way back from Guatemala.
Yeah.
How long back home, actually, because that's the other important thing, right? I'm not from Guatemala.
Yeah, exactly. That's my next question. So let's take it from beginning. You're in Libya now, but let's start in the very beginning. So where were you born and what was it like growing up there?
I'm from Brazil. I was born in no such small town, but funny enough, from all the places I've lived in my life, the place that I lived the last time, I lived in my hometown for less than 1 year before moving to other places in Brazil. Mm-hmm. It was mainly because of my father's work, and it kind of had a huge impact in my childhood and my siblings' childhood. Because of his work, we ended up moving from cities and from time to time, and which also I think has a lot of impact of how I am right now as a person. So growing up was really kind of interesting, like curious experience for me. That at that time I couldn't quite grasp for certainly. I mean, I was a child, but for my whole life, I've never lived in a house or in a specific place more than 4 years. So sometimes I ended up staying, sometimes in the same city, but moving around, many times moving around cities, sometimes moving around countries. But it was quite funny in a sense that he ended up creating kind of a system for my family that I never knew growing up what it was like to have a weekend on my grandparents or spending some long weekends or some quick holidays with my family besides my parents and my siblings because most of the time we're far away from everybody else,
Uh-huh.
which made me kind of create a little bit of different families, if I say so, in different parts of Brazil for my childhood and now in the world through my adulthood, which was quite, yeah, I mean, like now looking back, I see it as like a really positive thing that I had the opportunity to experience this type of different places and different cultures in this kind of context. Yeah, it was not easy because, and this is something that I talk a lot with my sister. I couldn't understand what was, I mean, one of the first really important memories that I have moving from one place to another. I was around 8 years old, and for me it was kind of like a unexpected moving. So like one of my best friends that up until now I talk to her. I met her when I was 2 years old, and it was kind of funny that even though I move around, she's still one of my best friends.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom called her daughter, and I call her her mother, my mom. I mean, it's a different kind of friendship that I never thought could also be possible to last in this kind of situation. Like the last time that I saw my this friend is like 3 years ago. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, before going to Guatemala or something like that. So it was kind of a long time ago. And but yeah, so for me it was a bit and this is something that I really have in mind with this 8 years old when I was at that time, because it was when I was leaving the town that this friend she left. She lives and she still lives there. So it's really kind of funny also to have this kind of perspective, me moving around and having this kind of person that really grasped this place in this context. And it also gave me another type of perspective of life and style and what people aim as individuals as well. So for me, I think it's really beautiful that I can also have this kind of experience.
Yeah.
And I think also because of this kind of situation that we lived in, I ended up having a really closer relationship with my siblings. And he also made me enjoy a little bit more when we were like with the big family. Because again, I'm from Brazil, so um, we all like party and we all like to have really everything. It makes everybody happy, and we also like to enjoy each other's presence. And my family specifically, they all like really like to express love and to be together. So for me, it was always like this kind of exciting moment when it was like the holidays for the end of the year, because it was the time that I had the chance to see my sibling, my cousins, my aunt, my grandmother, my grandfather. So it's like it was kind of this moment that okay, we're gonna get everybody together for a couple of days and just enjoying being together. But at some times, like now when I look back, right? But sometimes when I remember that moment, and sometimes I even talk about this in my therapy, that because I would stay like in the city, and sometimes like, oh, this is gonna be like a long weekend, whatever. And many of my friends like, oh, I'm gonna spend the weekend in my grandparents, I'm gonna do something. I was like, well, and they're like, oh, what are you gonna do, Carol? I was like, well, I'm staying with my family as as any other day, because like traveling in Brazil is really expensive. And everything is really far away. So even to take like a plane, it takes almost 3 hours, depending from where I was living at the moment to see my grandparents. So it was not sustainable because we were 5 people at the time. So to move everybody around was not sustainable.
Yeah.
But I think he also gave me like another perspective how to enjoy and appreciate these moments when they happened, of having everybody together.
Yeah. So you said you were 5 of you. What was your role in the family when you were growing up?
Ooh, this is a big question.
It
Um,
is.
yes, especially because besides my different kind of childhood that I had, there was another situation that ended up happening. My youngest brother, he was born with a really severe health condition that ended up making that my mother was kind of not present for the beginning of his life, like his first 4 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
And since I'm the oldest one, and even though like in that situation, my grandmother or somebody would come to help, like take care of me and my sister. I don't know what I mean. I was 6 years old at the time. I felt like I had like a responsibility on me. Like, well, my mother's not here. It's just me and my sister. So I have to be the bigger one and take care of her and things like that. So since really young, I think I ended up putting in myself. Not that anybody expected that from me, anyhow, because it was also like an adult and somebody that was present taking care of us. But I felt that um, I had to fill this gap
Yeah.
that was there somehow. And since really young, I ended up like having this kind of responsibility of being the responsible one in whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's something that I still carry with me until now.
I think so, yes.
In a sense of trying to, yeah. Yeah, you remember us walking you down back to your hotel, right? Yeah, 2 a.m. Yes, exactly this kind of situation. But it's also something that I'm still trying to readjust in a sense of how to readjust this kind of role that I ended up putting in me. Now I know, I mean, now that I'm grown up and everything, I put things in perspective and I know that my parents were doing their best at dealing with a child. Like my
Yeah.
brother had to do a really, really complicated surgery and he was like 9 months old. So like they were doing their best, but for me, it was kind of hard to also understand this thing. Um, so all of this also ended up me realizing at a young age, because some of the time that my mother had to go because of my brother had something specifically, we ended up staying with neighbors, we ended up staying with the people that left, that live around us somehow. And for me, this was one of the key initial points that I understood, because living in big cities and feeling more and more like this disconnection between people and among people, because everybody's really on a hush and everybody on their own life. Um, at that time, when we were passing to this really complicated situation, we relied on the community.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was really like, and now when I look back to the past, like it was really nice to see that I had the chance also and the opportunity to experience this. That now when I apply even from my professional life. But if you think about like some of the challenges that we face, like as a modern society in big cities, that everybody's on a rush, and sometimes you don't even know who's your neighbor. It is something that I felt like when I was in the university, like you don't even know who's the person living on your next door. Because it's like, oh, everybody's so self-sustained in a way that's like it's really crazy.
Yeah.
So for me, it's also how to go back to the point of just people meeting people, you know. And I
Yeah,
think it's something
understand.
that I first learned at that moment, and I try to apply into now.
How do you
This is
apply
key.
it then? How did that shape you?
At some point, since I was moving around um, quite an amount of time, that for me was really unsure when I would move. I remember that at some point it was like, what is the point of meeting new people and
Mhm,
knowing new people if I'm gonna say goodbye to them and eventually move?
mhm,
So at the beginning, I had this kind of thinking of, is it worth it to make the connections and like to be involved in people and ended up caring about people if this is not gonna last? And so at the beginning, for me, it was a bit like, well, it's not worth it because I'm gonna end up crying and I'm gonna end up leaving, and I mean,
yeah.
it's not worth it. But I remember that on my late part of the adolescence, and then when I moved to 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 Rio to have my studies in the university, this ended up being like a key change for myself. But I think it's also associated to what I decided at the point to do. Um, so I ended up studying international affairs.
Mhm,
So I think at that moment when I ended up like moving away far from my parents, because to study ended up moving to another city, and I ended up being the person seeing my parents once a year.
mm,
And I ended up living with my aunts, which was quite of interesting for me. Opportunity to have a stronger connection to her and her family and everybody. Um, because it got me the opportunity to see also like the other side of the story that we
mhm,
didn't have the chance to see when we were far away.
yeah.
Um, so it was really nice to have the opportunity to create like this stronger bond. Um, but at the same time, it was my opportunity to also question myself about this. Well, just because you're leaving doesn't mean that it's not worth it to meet people and to get to know them and to create this kind of connections.
Mhm,
And I ended up taking this to my life because, and then you go back to the point that my favorite documentary is called Humans. It's available in YouTube. I really
mhm,
recommend you to see it because it's a documentary that it's only about like testimonies of people talking about different topics, about love, about life, about fear, about dreams. And for me, it was a bit of like a wake up call as well, like to know, I mean, to understand that at the end, even, I mean, we're all just people with fears, with dreams, with desires. And I think it go back to for me, this is really key to understand that it's amazing to know new people. And for me, it was really important also to the point of involving myself in different kind of things, from human rights activism up to the point of just sitting with people to listen to their stories. And I know that this, and it just came to my mind right now, honestly. I have this since young because one of the greatest storytellers that I have in my life is my grandfather. He was a really good storytelling. So for me, it was really nice. Like when I had this chance to see him once a year, or whenever I had the chance to sit with him, I would just sit and listen because he would talk and talk. He had a lot of things to to share, and I was like, that's so amazing to see like life
mhm,
from another person perspective.
yeah.
And I think for me, ended up this being one of the key things about just meeting people. And I mean, why? That's okay. I mean, if you, we all gonna say goodbye eventually at some point. If it's not because of the distance, it's because of death. You know, I mean, life has a beginning and an end for everybody. So this shouldn't stop me from making connection and know people. So I think it
Yeah.
also goes back to the point of your podcast as well, is about just
Mhm.
knowing people as people. I mean, without their title, without their university, whatever, and because at the end it's just people with stories too that are worth to be sharing.
Yeah, I completely agree. And yeah, I'm glad that you grew up and decided that it's good to meet people and talk to them, because otherwise we wouldn't talk. So, and I wouldn't have the pleasure. Yeah, I wouldn't have the pleasure in Antigua to get to know you a bit more, and obviously doing this episode with you, which is so far really amazing. So thank you for sharing. I really appreciate it. You've mentioned
Thank you.
love and fear. So with you moving around a lot, how is it going with love?
Well, it depends. um, when I ended up deciding to be and this is one of the titles that I hope is the only one that I'm going to throw here, is about being a humanitarian and whatever this means. Um, I've been realizing that it's not only a job, it's a lifestyle.
Mhm.
And it has the pros and cons as everything in life. And it's I mean, it's really amazing that because of the job that I have, I had the chance to go to Guatemala and to meet you, and first to have this opportunity for you to reach out again, and we have this kind of conversation that we have right now. But at the same time, it takes to the other side of the the challenges of always being away from somewhere and from somebody. Uh, and this goes to different points. And I mean, for me, when I think about love, I think I don't associate only to romantic love, but like friends and family, whatever. Um, for me, it was a bit complicated that the first time that I ended up moving to Guatemala, I had something in me, and I really respect my intuition. I had something in me that told me you cannot go before the beginning of next year, in that case 2022. At that time, I didn't know why, but I said, well, I need to spend the end of the year with my family and just to enjoy, as is like one of the only times that we get all together still because everybody's in different places. Um, that moment ended up being the last time that I had the chance to see my grandfather before he passed away.
Mm.
And I know now that that was really important for me. And when I ended up receiving the news, I was really far away from Brazil. Um, I was not even in Guatemala. I was in Europe. I felt I was in peace with myself because I knew that I had nothing pending,
Mhm.
um, and that I knew that I enjoyed all I could with him while he was alive, and that we did all that could have been done. Um, but this is the part of the challenges to me, also because of the type of the life that I had. And in some of the countries that I've been, like Libya, it's impossible to have a partner in here physically with me because of the context, the security reason, the how you can get a visa to enter the country and whatsoever. Um, so it can also be really complicated. I have one of my relationships that it was really we tried, and this is the thing that we ended up trying, but get to the point that sometimes people just cannot handle to manage this type of person that I am, and I think this is also okay. Um, but one of the things that I ended up taking with me, because this is one of the big questions that I had at some point with myself, I ended up questioning some of the decisions of I know who I am, I know what moves me as a person, as a human being. That's why I do what I do. But at some point, I was like, is it worth it considering the things that I'm giving up and that I'm to do whatever I'm doing. And I remember one of my best friends, because I was crying with her at the time, and she told me one of the greatest phrases that I had in my life, that even made me tattoo something for myself to remind me every single day. Because at some point I was like, I ended up being the young Carolina again, saying, but is it worth it to open up to people and to being vulnerable and trying something that and eventually I know I'm gonna leave, and perhaps this whatever I'm building is gonna like crumbles with the distance. I mean, is it worth it? And I saw myself at the same moment as I was when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
And then she stopped me and then she told me, there's nothing wrong with putting more love into the world.
That's beautiful.
And this is the phrase that I'm taking with me, because that's true. I mean, you cannot predict whatever's going to happen in whichever type of category in your life. And I think it's about you being your true self in whatever you do. So when I had this talk with her in 2021, after that, I was a bit like, you know what? The only way to do something is with love and just being honest and kind and whatever. So for me, this ended up being, I think this is one of my mottos in my life, like guidance, whatever I feel like a bit lost, I go back to the point and then I think of this phrase that my friend was telling me in 2020 and saying, there's nothing wrong with putting more love into the world. I ended up taking this in the different things of my life. I honestly never know what is the question, but the answer for me is always going to be love. And for me, I think this is really a really important thing that I've been carrying on with myself in everything that I've been doing. Yeah.
So that's beautiful. I love that, and I absolutely agree with that. That there's definitely nothing wrong with putting more love into this world. We definitely need more and more love and more kindness and all of that. So what are the things that moves you, that you decided that you want to be a humanitarian?
I think we go back to the basics. It's about people. Because I always go back to the point that, and I talk this a lot with my humanitarian colleagues, we cannot save the world. I mean, if somebody is doing this, thinking that they can be like a Superman, Superwoman, or whatever, no, it's impossible. But one thing that I've seen and I've learned throughout these years doing this is that I may not make big changes, but if I'm capable of supporting one person and making, in some cases, even supporting to give back a bit of dignity and to see them thrive in a way, it's already a universe that I ended up changing, because it's a whole person that ended up being supported somehow. So for me, whenever I think about it, for me, it's go back to the basics of it's just a human with another human. And for me, the more I work and the more I hear different stories, the more I know that many of these people, they just forgot about the power that they have. And my role is just to enable themselves to find this power again. That's why I personally don't like the word empowering, because I don't think it's about giving power to somebody. I think is about enabling the person to remember that they have the will and they have the agency to make the change on their own lives. And one of the crazy things that happened to me in the beginning of this year is that it was right before I left Guatemala. In April, I ended up going to Mexico because of work. And one of the days, the team took me to one of the informal settlements that they had in the city for me to have a look on what they're doing, so I could give a bit of support and suggestions. And I was just walking on the street, and I heard somebody telling me, "Hey, I know you're from Guatemala." No, I mean, I know it was for me because I was the only one person there around me that has been in Guatemala. So I ended up looking, and it was one of the patients that I had the chance to meet when I was in Guatemala, and that was like 4 months before.
Mhm.
And I had the chance to sit with her and to talk with her, and to also understand the challenges and that she was facing at that moment, being in the kind of environment, but also seeing all that she achieved for herself and her children, because there's also like this will and this dream of, I mean, everybody, I believe that every single one of us there, something moves us as a person for whatever reason. And I think this is something that's really key. And seeing her there, I mean, I was never expecting that. Never expecting that. I was like, wow, it's really, I mean, for me, it was really moving because I was in Guatemala for almost 2 years and a half working in the migration context, and having the chance to see the person that I personally had the chance to talk to and support somehow in Guatemala, see that she was safe in a way. In Mexico, for me, was a bit like really a wow moment that I think it was really important for me to close that chapter of my professional life before moving towards other things.
Mhm.
So yeah, that was really like impressive for me. That, and I think it goes back to this purpose of me of just a human with a human at the end of the day.
Yeah. Human with a human. That's also very nice. So you left Guatemala and now you're in Libya, which is very complex place with a lot of challenges. Why did you choose that one?
I don't know if it was more me choosing or this place choosing me. um, Again, I respect my intuition.
Mhm.
I'm still trying to figure out why I ended up coming here, because right when I received the proposal for Libya, a couple of weeks later, I received the proposal to go to Colombia.
Mhm.
And at that moment, I ended up having a bit of personal crisis because Colombia is my personal dream place to work and to be and to have the opportunity to learn and to engage with people in a different way. Um, but something, I mean, and I had a lot of sleepless nights thinking about it and talking to people and trying to be rational and whatever. And I was like, no, there's something telling me that I have to go to Libya. So I ended up respecting my something that I'm still trying I'm
Figure
honestly
out.
still trying to understand. Yes. Um, Yeah, but yeah, professionally, it's a really complex place to work. But at the same time, it's been really a privilege, if I could put it this word, to engage with people in different levels in a sense of some of them know, and some of them, because of whatever they experienced, they ended up forgetting like this agency that they have on their own life. Um, and for me, it's really also amazing to see the work that the whole team is putting, also from a mental health perspective, on how you can like support people healing in another levels, because many of them is not only what you see physically, it comes on a different type of dimensions that that I really it really amazed me about the work that the team has been doing on that. But at the same time, something that has been really moving me, being here and having the I could say it's a privilege to be in a really small city, because I'm a really small city. Um, so I have the opportunity also to talk to people, the chance of just sitting and talking and listening to stories and understanding people's perspectives, and this also includes the local people. And sometimes I decide to have lunch with different people or have dinner with people, and they just tell me the stories, and it's really nice to have this opportunity to share and to also learn, especially learn
Yeah.
from these other perspectives of life and culture. Because yes, it's really different from from where I came from. So it's also really humbling to strap down, in a sense, to put myself on their shoes and respect um, their beliefs and their ways of deciding on how to make their life choices.
You've mentioned that even in Guatemala and now in Libya as well, that you have seen a lot of people who you or your team helped to find their agency for themselves again. How does person lose agency?
It depends on the context. But something that I've been seeing as a common thing from the different type of contexts that I've been working is that there's always some kind of traumatic event that these people go through, that, as any other human being, they start questioning themselves. But I've been working in a migration context for the past 6-7 years. So it's kind of a different kind of association when these people go through a traumatic event, because this is usually associated to the impossibility of returning to a safe place. Because this is the kind of exercise that I like to do to myself. Like, if something happens right now and you feel desperate, you know where is your safe place. You know where you can go back to, and I mean, the family, or just a physical place that you can just, like a safe haven or something like that. But some of these places, their traumatic events associated to not having this place anymore, or being unable to go back to this place that they understood as their safe place to go back. So it's part of these events that sometimes are also related to like proper human rights violation and humanitarian international law that takes things to other levels and kind of other type of legal words. But if I strap down to the human side of that, and my personal understanding is exactly this, about these traumatic events, just unable then to have this kind of things.
Yeah, that must be very scary. I can imagine.
Yeah, I only can imagine as well, luckily.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah.
Where do you take the resilience to face all of this?
I think I always go back to my friend's phrase. There's nothing wrong in putting a little bit of love into the world. And we have a phrase in Portuguese that, well, I'm going to say in Portuguese and then I'm going to translate, which basically says, gentileza gera gentileza, which is basically means that kindness is also like a way of having more kindness. If I want, I mean, it sounds really cliche, and I think sometimes it is cliche, and that's okay. But if I want to see a change in the world, I have to be the first change. I mean, I cannot expect other people to do something different if I don't expect myself to do something different. It for me has always been like the exercise that I usually do to myself is not comparing myself to other people, but trying to see if I'm being a better human than I was yesterday. And if I can like see that I'm being a better human than I was yesterday, I'm already doing a good job to myself in this kind of sense. It's not easy sometimes, and this is something that I'm glad that it's been more talked about, but I think there's still a lot that needs to be processed and to be developed on, but also about the mental health impact of the people that do this kind of work. Because even though I'm really funny and I laugh a lot, and every place that I go, and I thought Libya would be different, but it's not. Last week, somebody just told me, like, I want to even record the laugh because it's really funny. It wants to make me laugh more. I was like, oh my God, my laugh is really famous everywhere I go. But sometimes when I go to bed to sleep, I'm like revisiting my mind, the things that I've been listening throughout the day, that people have been telling me that they're going through. There are many, many, many times that there's nothing I can do to that person. Honestly, there's nothing like I can physically and like a material to provide that person. But also something that I've been seeing that sometimes just you taking the time to sit and pay attention to that person, you give them space to speak, means a lot to them. Because they've been invisible or they've been mistreated for so long that you being kind to them is sometimes it's the only thing that you can provide, and it is enough. And sometimes you have to deal with not being enough because, again, you go back to the point of what I was saying a minute ago, like if whoever starts doing this kind of work expected to change the world, well, it's going to be frustrated for all the life because it's going to be impossible to change the world. But I think it's about these small revolutions that you do on a daily basis that can bring some kind of impact.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So you say it's basically impossible to change the world, and people might be frustrated if they wanted to change the world, but in a completely hypothetical world, if there would be one thing you could change about the world, what would it be?
Oh, yeah. That's such a broad question. I never thought about it. I think that this is my pessimist side saying like, well, if I cannot change the world, what am I going to take the time to think about it? Oh, but again, I think you go back to people being more kind. I think Yeah, again, kindness and love. Love is the answer. I don't even know the question, but love is the answer.
I take that.
Yeah, I think people taking the time to listen to each other and being kind.
Hmm.
There's a long way that things can be done with you just being kind.
Yeah, I agree.
This is for me one of the big discussions that I had. I remember even my time on the university is about, is it possible to tolerate the people that do not tolerate anything?
Hmm.
And I think I don't know the answer to this question, to be honest, but I think it's something that always comes back to my mind about how can you actually put two people that could not manage to be sitting together to just sit together and talk to each other? How would this go?
Hmm.
If kindness could be an answer and a resolution to anything, I would put more kindness in the world to try to make it a little bit better.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's interesting because recently, actually, I've heard that the someone did a study about this, that people usually see the other people, the other side, who has different opinions, much worse than they actually are. And in reality,
Mm,
if we were talking spectrum, and I don't know, stupid example, but like right and left politics, right? The people
yeah.
from right have think that the left are really like uber left, super left, but in the end, there is like a normal kind of um, they are just all kind of in the center, and they have so much more
Mhm.
in common than they think they have in common. But because of this
Yeah.
us and them, we kind of
Mm,
giving the other people a different or like more extreme characteristics than they actually have.
mhm.
And yeah, as you say, if we
Yeah.
would spend more time talking to each other in a kind way, trying to understand each other instead of uh, thinking what the other people think, um, yeah, I think that would be really good for the world. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. This reminds me of the time when I was working from the human rights perspective in Brazil. There was a really huge discussion about this. I mean, how can we, because human rights discussions in Brazil, they are associated with the left. So, but we got to the point of like, how can we bridge it to the point that people that initially are against talking about this topic can talk about it and understand that this is also about them.
Mhm.
And it was always coming back to the point of we're all human, we all have fears, and some of the reasons why some people are against some things is based on fears
Mhm.
or based on misconception or misperspective of things. And yeah, and I completely agree with what you said. I think it's all coming back to again the basics of a human being just a human. And then I have another suggestion that is my favorite one.
Mhm.
It started as a project and then it ended up being a game. I don't know if you heard of. It's We Are Not Really Strangers.
No, I haven't.
It's now it's like a game
Mhm.
that basically the philosophy behind it, the whole game is like we are all inside, we're all the same. Inside, we all have dreams, we all have fears, we all have like wishes and desires and whatever. So it goes back to the basic about just a person knowing a person. So it's like it's a card game that you have different questions about life, like, oh, if you could describe this moment of your life in if it would be like a title for this time of your life, what would it be? And this
Mhm.
type of questions that make you think things from different perspective that sometimes you never thought about it before.
Yeah, I've seen something similar because recently I went to an event which is called "Fuck the Small Talk." Uh, it's
Yeah.
it's from a guy from Colombia. Actually, I don't think he's from Colombia, but he been based in Colombia for some time, I think. And he created this. They call themselves Epic Llama, and they started this event, "Fuck the Small Talk." And it's basically they're using these because I went to one like a month ago, and they have this sort of cards. and they put like 5-6 people around the table, and they give them like five cards with a similar kind of questions where you have to really think about, oh, okay, this is interesting, and the people just talk together, the whole evening about these topics, and I thought it's a great thing, really. You could, well, probably not in Libya, but they are still taking people from around the world. If someone wants to do events like that in their city, they can just
that's
apply.
nice.
Yeah, it's really cool.
But that's really nice. That's one of the things us as a human as well. I mean, we judge many people without even knowing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I also like this kind of exercise because it also makes you like question yourself about the way that you judge, like your prejudice as well. And, yeah.
You often realize that you have quite some biases, right? Based on just like someone looks certain way, and then they start talking, and it's like, oh, it didn't cross my mind that would be the case, and it's just like, and then you have to face yourself and like, well, that's my bias.
Yes. Yeah, I just think that this is also the big thing, how like you also have to end up realizing that, oh, this was on me.
That's the main thing about it, isn't it? That it makes you self-aware of how wrong you actually are sometimes.
Yeah.
So we never know what's gonna touch the other person we communicate with, and that might goes both ways, right? In a good way, also in a bad way, but hopefully we're gonna touch people more with the good things. But was there some act of kindness someone gave to you in the past, they were kind to you, and you still think about it, or you think it really changed you, or maybe your trajectory in life, or maybe it was just like small thing and you try to do it as well because of that moment when you experienced it?
Oh, again, so complicated.
I like it complicated, okay?
Yes, I know. When I try to see so much kindness in the world, it's a bit complicated to select. I think about one specific thing that happened not a long time ago, and I think perhaps I remember this more vividly because it was not a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes, like, I revisit some stuff and I remember some really good kindness that I received that I didn't remember for some time, and it comes back to me. But one that I was revisiting on my mind quite recently was on my last day in Guatemala. I was there for quite some time, so I had a lot of friends, a lot of people that I wanted to see, that I wanted to say goodbye, because I didn't know when I had the chance to see them again. But it was really unfortunate because the day that I was about to leave, it was like during work day, so many people were working and many people were really busy. So I ended up seeing some of them when I had a moment. My last day, I was in Antigua, and then I was going to the capital to see my good friends. They were like, "No, you're gonna see us before you leave." But during the morning, while I was like out of the hotel that I was with my 2 bags, which is basically my whole life, let's see, 2 big bags in my backpack.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well, I'm gonna have lunch here, and then I'm gonna wait for the cart to pick me up and drive me to the city. And one thing that really blows my mind still is that the person that, because at some point I was like, well, I'm gonna be alone, it's gonna be okay, so I'm gonna process 2 years and a half by myself crying while I wait for the car to come. No, and I think that's okay as well. I think it's part of the process I think it's, at least for me, it's really important to process by myself some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Also to be able to let go some things that happened as well.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point I was like, oh, that's okay. I'm gonna be by myself, because I had a really amazing last weeks there that I wasn't expecting that they would be that good, because nothing was planned. My friends came over, we had a lot of party, then I met some amazing people, and then we were walking around places and I was showing them different places, and it was really nice. And then one of the girls that I met 2 days before, her boyfriend went back to the US and she was there. because she was staying for 2 more days or something in Guatemala. And I was with everything, my things. I was like, well, and then I told her, oh, it's good to see you. So, I mean, when life happens, let's see if we're gonna meet each other in another place. And then she was like, no, where are you going? I was on the phone with her. I was like, well, I'm just having lunch. Then I'm gonna say goodbye to Alex, and then I'm gonna go to the capital. She's like, no, I'm gonna stay with you. I'm not gonna stay alone. And like this random person that I met 2 days ago, she really, since the moment that I left the hotel until the moment that the car picked me up, she was there with me all the time, and I was crying. I was like, I'm so sorry, I'm crying. Just I need to, I need to process 2 years and a half in this country. She says, no, I get you, and like it was for me, it was so nice because she could. I mean, it was her first time in Guatemala after many years. And I mean, she could have been visiting people that she wanted to see. She could have been like doing whatever. No, she was there with me in a restaurant while I was crying, processing everything that was happening for 2 years. So that was really nice, like to see that even though we didn't know each other well, she was there for me exactly at the moment that I needed, exactly with the most random person that I could expect at that moment. And it was really nice because when I was about to say goodbye to her, I was like, and she was like, she ended up even crying. She was like, oh my God, it was really nice seeing you. And we kept touch. We ended up keeping touch until now. Like last week, I just wrote her and she was writing me. We were talking. So it was really nice that like some random situations that happened that some people, again, just being kind. So for me, it was like, I was like, why are you staying here? You could be doing. She's like, no, I want to be with you because I also know that you need somebody at the moment. I was like, oh, that's so kind. So that really ended up caught me by surprise. I told her a couple of times, it's like, oh, it was really nice that you did this. She's like, no, I mean, she's like, get over it. That's okay. So it was really, I mean, I was really even more emotional because of that, because I was not expecting to have this kind of support that I didn't even imagine that I needed at that moment. And she was the one doing this. So it was really nice. It was really nice.
Beautiful.
I think it reinforced all my beliefs in a sense of there's nothing wrong of caring about people and being kind and whatever. So I think it's really nice that also in this kind of interaction that I have on a daily basis, like even like receiving your message again, I was so happy to receive your message. I was like, wow, it's so nice that these people that I saw once in my life, we had the chance like to touch and be touched in a sense that we wanted to reconnect. Because for me, also go back to a point, there's something that I always talk with some of my friends. Many of my friends we live really far away from each other. And when we see each other is once a year, and if we do. And I was talking to them like it's really hard with this kind of world as well that we have like so much going on that you have like TikTok and Instagram that it thinks to catch your attention needs to be less than 10 seconds. Otherwise, you just forgot it. It's like it's really nice when you like see people from some time ago that ended up reaching out to you just to see how you're doing and to see how's life. Like just for the sake of reaching out and wanting to know how they're doing. So I think that's really nice about like how people still care.
Yeah. We should care more. Now you're saying it, and I'm just like, Jesus, I need to write my sister a message.
Yeah, perhaps yes.
And some old friends I haven't spoken to for a while. Yeah, I'm guilty, and you're right. Like we definitely should.
No, but again, and that's the secret. You have their phones, but they also have your phone.
That is true. That is true.
About it. Yeah, there are some people that are really. I mean, whenever I think about them, they're like really amazing people that I take them into my heart. But it's the kind of connection that doesn't exist anymore because things happen in life. But there are some people that, I mean, if I ended up calling them again, everything's gonna be alright. But I mean, they could also call, So don't put this pressure on you because it's not only on you. For a relationship to thrive, yeah, for a relationship to thrive, it depends on both ways. So
No, you are so
Don't put this
correct
pressure.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, because I helped this. Oh, I helped this guilt with me. I mean, it was for me. It was for sometimes. I used to feel like that. It's like, oh my God, how come it's not working because I'm not the one reaching out? It's like, wait a second. They could also reach out to me if they wanted to. But I think it's also not about like this fight of pride. So, oh, if you're not reaching out, I'm not going to reach out. But it's about also being vulnerable in a sense of, hey, I miss you.
It's sometimes so hard to do it, isn't it? Like that's just, yeah, as you say, a little bit of pride. Like I'm really trying not to have that, but sometimes with some people, I might have that a little bit, and it's really annoying. And I'm just like, come on, just don't be like that.
I completely get it. For me, I had it before, but I ended up realizing with some kind of in moments that I stripped down of this pride and I ended up being vulnerable in a sense of, hey, I really fucking miss you. I just wanted to reach out because you're important to me. You're a nice person and I want to reach out and keep this connection somehow. So being vulnerable, we can also have the bad side of that, of being heartbreaking from friendship that doesn't work, for relationship, romantic relationship that doesn't work, for family and relatives that you don't have a good relationship with. But I think for me, it's also, well, if it's important for you, it's worth trying.
Mm-hmm.
And then if at the end it doesn't work, at least you know you did your best and you tried.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But I really understand you. And I think it's also, at least for me, what's gonna happen with my pride? I mean, the person know that I care. Well, good for them. Let them know that you care, you know? In this world of many information of people that don't care and hate as well. Let's put more love there.
Yeah, yeah. I was just thinking
Let's go
about
back.
it. Yeah, let's
Yeah,
put more
that's why
love
I think
into the
every
world.
day, yes, exactly. That's why I think every single day for this friend of mine. She's just amazing. And yeah, it's really nice that I also have this kind of people like to remind me this kind of things that the important things, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, make that call, write that message if you feel like you need to do it. Just do it.
I'm gonna think about it. I'm gonna think about it. So, okay, tell me if you know about what the future holds for you. Do you want to go to Colombia next, or?
Oh yes. I know that this moment was just a detour for my moment in I mean, I don't know if my future is Colombia, but I know my future is Latin America
How
again
come?
and again and again. It goes back to something that related to identity
Mm-hmm.
that which is kind of curious for Brazilians in general. And this I talked a lot with this famous friend of the love phase. I'm gonna put name to people. Her name is Maria Eduarda. She she ended up also moving to live abroad, and we ended up talking a lot about it because at that moment I was back in Brazil. I was living in Brazil. She was living abroad in the U.S. and she was telling me how kind of even violent it was for her to be labeled as Latina because us Brazilians we don't usually identify ourselves as Latino people because we don't speak Spanish. In
Mm-hmm.
most of Latin America countries, we speak Spanish. Even though we have similar culture, Brazilian culture is really way different than when you compare Colombia to Peru or Guatemala to Nicaragua.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was in Brazil, I always felt like really nice about this Latin culture, the kind of concept of Latin America. But for me, I didn't quite feel related to that as a Brazilian.
Mm-hmm.
And she ended up telling me a lot how, for her, it was kind of a violence to have a foreigner, like a US person, telling her, "Oh, you're a Latina. Since you have this kind of hair, you're from Brazil? Well, I don't care from Brazil. You're Latino." And she said that she had to adapt to understand how she identified to this identity that was forced into her.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
for me,
that's
that was like,
interesting.
wow. Yeah, I mean, that's really heavy at some point, even like to have this kind of, um, I call it violence. For me, it's a cultural violence. When you're
Mm-hmm.
thinking about it more, how it also affects the person as in her identity as a migrant in another country. Um, and then when I ended up having this, my thought, and then I ended up moving to Guatemala, which was my first time living outside of Brazil in Latin America. I already lived in other places around the world, but never in Latin America. So that was my first time living in another Latin America country. And at the beginning, I felt like the disconnection because it's another language. They have this love for another type of food that for me was really weird. It's like, well, but in Brazil we don't have this kind of. And say, well, we are Central America, we do this. And I was like, well, but in Brazil, we don't. So for me, it was at the beginning it was really weird, and I still don't know. I still don't know what, when, where. I had this kind of click that I just understand why. I mean, I just know that I'm a Latina right now.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, but I also still understand why the Brazilians don't associate with this kind of culture because it's really different in many ways. But since I ended up figuring out this and spending not only a long time in Guatemala, but having the chance to explore some other countries in the region, like to have access to local culture in other Latin American countries, it was a really nice and kind way of me to re-identify myself
Mm-hmm.
um, with my Latino identity. Um, and in some way, it brings me back to this point that right now, whenever I'm thinking about something like, oh, I just miss Latin America. And I'm not saying, oh, but in Brazil, no, it's not Brazil. I miss Latin America. Put me whatever, I'm going to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the other day, one of the persons that came to visit the project, she speaks Spanish. And we were just speaking Spanish. And that's when I was like, oh, I'm so happy to speak something else than just English.
Mm-hmm.
Because I got used to this being Latin America. Because when I was in Guatemala, I was speaking Spanish all the time. So I was not even speaking Portuguese, which is my mother language. Um, but it was just this kind of a different kind of connection in my brain and in my emotions that I cannot explain honestly. It's about also understanding that I don't need to go and cross the ocean to find people that um, need any type of support that I could provide.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also understanding that at some point, I even thinking about going back to Brazil and working for local organizations in a sense of also giving back to my community in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are many, many needs here. There are many needs in many countries, but I don't need to travel to the other side of the ocean to find these needs and find kind of these gaps that I could try to fill somehow. So for me, it was a bit like also this kind of understanding at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I also know that, and perhaps this is the kind of things that I'm still trying to make sense of, as you asked before, why Libya? I feel that for me it was also important to come and see how I could work in migration in another context, to go back to Latin America with this
Mm-hmm.
knowledge to try to implement something different.
Okay.
And I think this is kind of the thing that I also needed for myself, in a sense, also to have the possibility of going back with another perspective. Because I also have this kind of challenge. Okay, if you're only talking to your bubble, you're not gonna come with new ideas because you're talking to the mirror in a sense. So for me, it's also how to extend this kind of experience somehow. But I know that many people still ask me why did I that I'm coming to Libya, not going to Colombia. And I don't have a rational response to that because everybody that asks me this question because knows that I would choose Colombia over many things. But yeah, sometimes things just doesn't make sense, and you just have to follow your heart. So yes, I did. I'm following my intuition, but I
Yeah.
know that my future is Latin America somehow. So in case you in case you go back to Latin America, let me know. Perhaps I'm gonna be there already.
I'm going. I'm going. I don't know when, but I'm going.
Yeah, because you're more than welcome to stay wherever I am.
Oh, thank you. So, what is Latin identity then? What is it? What does it mean?
Oh, I I don't know. I mean, I can only say what I understand as my
Hmm.
identity
Yeah.
as as a Latina. Um, but it still is hard to put into words. Sometimes I feel like it's not something that you say, something that you feel. No,
Maybe,
but let's
maybe you're
see.
right.
Yes. No, but for me, is this kind of warmth
Hmm.
that I lack every time that I'm away, in a sense of it's not only about, and this is something that is kind of funny. Brazilians among ourselves, we do a lot of jokes saying that you can find a Brazilian anywhere in the world and you know it's a Brazilian about how loud they're talking and how loud they're doing things. And yeah, I mean, we're really loud people, but this
Mm.
loudness always comes with this kindness and community love in the sense of, for me, it's warmth. When I think about it, for me, it's warmth in a way of like, being open and approachable and in a sense of really welcoming. For me, this is something that I really love in the different countries that I've been on the region, and it's
Mhm.
kind of this common sense that I felt of people are just generally kind to receive you and to show you their culture. Man, I've been invited to I mean, I've met people that I've talked to them a couple of hours, whatever. Say, oh, you want to go to my house and we can eat lunch with my mother, whatever. I was like, what? They're like, yeah, I mean, so you can have something local. I mean, people are like that. It's so amazing. Like even like in this different kind of context that I've been to many people's houses just because they're kind and they're like, well, no, so you can also meet my family because they're really kind and I want to show them and so you can talk to them as well. So I think there's this kind of warmness that I never feel when I'm in another place or talking to other people. And there's also something that is really it's kind of a challenge for me when I'm away from Latin America in general, is because we're really touchy people. So we
Mhm.
like to touch for anything. We touch the hand, we hug, we kiss on the cheek, whatever. So sometimes when I'm in different contexts, like here, for instance, that especially men and women that don't hug each other, they don't talk to each other in a kind of this warmth and more approachable way. Sometimes I ended up making some cultural mistakes about that because sometimes I go like, "Oh, hi, how are you?" And it's like, "Oh, it's not. This is not how I should approach the person." But when I see I'm already halfway there and I have to, "Oh, I'm sorry." I mean, so,
Mhm.
oh, but that's amazing to think about it. Also makes me think more things, to like that. I say, "Well, I have to reflect this with myself afterwards." That's really nice. It's really nice to have the space, Lucia. Thank you.
No, I thank you. I'm really glad that you agreed and yeah, shared with me and us with the other people who will listen to it at some point. Um, Extremely
Yeah.
interesting and yeah, and really important, like the whole message. Yeah, more love in the world.
Yes,
Um,
love in the world. No, thank you for inviting me, for also giving me the space to be vulnerable somehow, and also for sharing your thoughts and everything. I think this is really important.
yeah. It was great. It was great. I think I'm gonna think about this one myself as well, and just kind of let it sink. Because it's really cool that we do have people like yourself in this world who are willing to live basically a nomad life just to support other people, and bringing a bit more love and support and kindness to the world where many other people would never go to, right? Like, yeah, so it's great.
No, thank you for your kind words. I try to not define myself as that because I think sometimes I feel there's a kind of weight when I hear this kind of thing. But that's really lovely of you to say it. But I'm just human, so there's a lot of good humans there. But thank you for your kind words.
Yeah. You're right. There's a lot of kind humans. They just worry to let the kindness out. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll leave you to it.
Perfect. But thank you so much. And have
I
a really
thank
good
you.
night.
You too. And hope all goes well over there. Cool. Okay.
Yes. Bye-bye. Have a nice evening.
You too. Bye-bye. Good night.
Thank you for listening to Stories of Ordinary Lives. The story you've heard today is more than just a tale. It's a seed of empathy and understanding. When we truly listen to each other's experiences, we don't just hear a story, we become part of it. And this is how we scale kindness, one story, one conversation at a time. By recognizing the value in every life, we create ripples of connection that can transform our communities and beyond. So, carry this story with you. Let it inspire you to listen more deeply to others. Until next time, remember that every life tells a tale worth hearing, and every act of kindness, no matter how small, has the power to create extraordinary change, one step at a time.